Well, good morning, everyone. Can I just have you all stand up, please? We're just going to start off with a little role play. No, not really. Okay, can we all just stand up? I just want you to shake out morning tea, all right? Enough of those little pastries. I need to feel the energy in the room. All right, now while you're doing that, yeah, it's good. Arms above your head normally means you're drunk, but... Now, I think it's only fair that we just sort of come out and disclose our disabilities before we start. So I do have slight ADHD tendencies. It was undiagnosed at school because I was just naughty back then. Please have a seat. I was diagnosed as being dyslexic when I was 27, which was a shock to some people, but not to me. Slight OCD tendencies. I was walking through the airport and I looked down and I'd picked up 5 pieces of paper. That won't be unfamiliar to the principals amongst us. We've got a message that I'd really like to share with you today, and that is, whose education is it? And I guess in some ways we feel like we've stumbled across something at TC, and I'd really like to share that with you today. 15 years ago, I visited Cambodia, a school in Cambodia, and Cambodia at that time was just opening up to tourists. It was a little bit of a scary place. And I visited a rural school in Pumville, and I saw these students there, and they were actually fighting at the window. There was a bit of, started off a bit of a shoving, and then there was like even a little bit of punching. Now, if you know about Cambodian people, by and large, they're incredibly peace-loving and polite, if you're generalising about a race. And these were some students that were fighting to get near the window. And the reason that occurred was that the teaching was going on inside, and unless they had money to actually pay the bribe to the teacher, they couldn't come into the classroom. Now that seems terrible that teachers would take, bribes from students, but the country at that stage was so corrupt that often the wages never actually made their way to the teacher. And the teacher was part of that little rural community, and without those bribes, they literally just wouldn't have eaten. So the students would bribe even though education is free, and these students were fighting to get in the door. Now, I had taken 15 students to Cambodia, and when we came home, I reflected that I saw students actually still fighting by the window and by the door, but they were trying to get out. And I thought, what's going on here? Well, in Cambodia, basically, when you finish your education, which should generally be about grade 4, you've got the choice of rice farmer or fish farmer. So during the carpet bombing that took place in the Vietnam War, basically there are a whole lot of craters around, so there are a whole lot of circular rice fields in Cambodia. They basically just levelled them off, and they actually grow rice fields. Have we got any careers practitioners in here? Any? No, not too many in Cambodia either, because you've got 2 choices, rice farmer or fish farmer. But this organisation, which we as a school support, called the 4 Winds Cambodia Project, they have supported students to travel from that remote village into the larger town, and they're now producing students who have gone on to become doctors, teachers, engineers, etc. And the reason that school can transform the lives of Cambodian children is because if you get to learn English, your wage literally either triples or quadruples. Now that's some fairly serious motivation for becoming educated. But I would put to you that in many ways school has actually lost the power to transform students' life in a Western context. We all know countless examples that go through the media of that disruptive student made good. We know those students. I had 2 students that left under sort of somewhat dubious circumstances, and on the way out their door, one was going off to become a bricklayer and one was going off to become a plumber, saying, "It's all right, Mr. Hutton, I'll be earning twice what you're earning in a couple of years." Now, I kid you not, in 2 years, one of them came back and he was a bricklayer. He was being flown regularly up to Queensland to lay bricks, and he showed me his group certificate, and he was actually earning more than I was as an assistant principal, which is pretty scary. You're not allowed to do this nowadays. It's sort of considered politically incorrect. But I'm told I won't claim to have done this, but I'm told that if you throw a frog into a pot of boiling water, it's not really a nice visual, is it? But they will jump out. But if you actually put a frog in cool water and put him on the stove, he won't actually notice the gradual change in heat, and he'll actually just go to sleep and die. Now, please don't do this. But I would contend that schooling is in fact the same thing. Okay, school as we have it at the moment, we call it the traditional model of education, but it's actually only the model where we have this sequential progression year by year and we hold students in batches has actually only been around for about 200 years. So it's not the traditional education that we think it is at all. Up until that time, students were still educated. We've had schools for thousands of years, but it was basically for elite, generally elite. It was generally for males, often done through the church. But it was only when Napoleon in the Napoleonic Wars started kicking everybody's backsides that the Germans have sort of thought, why are we losing this war? And it was quite simple. The troops were thinking for themselves. You know, when you're asked to run at a machine gun, they were going, no. And that wasn't a good thing. So the Prussians, in their very autocratic way, decided that they would develop an education system, and it's called the Prussian education system. You can Google it, you can YouTube it, etc. But it was basically to indoctrinate students to have a blind following of authority, to teach them conformity, some basic reading, writing and literacy skills. But essentially it was a form of control that they wanted to impose. The Americans, and it was largely through some very, very powerful industrial families, realised that if they brought this same model of education to America, they would develop their own quite roboticised workforce. And so that became our traditional model, and that quickly rolled throughout the world. Here's a picture of what we might call a traditional classroom. In some schools, you would only notice the difference because this is in black and white. But and there's the workforce that it was preparing students for. So there was the classroom, there was the workforce. I like to give the analogy between what we do in a lot of schools now to battery hen farming. We've become quite obsessed with the egg, which is NAPLAN and ATAR. And we've become so obsessed with getting, grading systems and consistency and how often is that egg coming out, that we've forgotten about the humanity of the process that we go through with students. So here is assembly, a little collaborative activity. This is a student, his name is Wing. He attends a Saturday school in the southeastern suburbs. He's also doing scholarship school in the hope that he might get a scholarship to an elite private school. Does really well in NAPLAN, and I think he'd agree he's ready to fly when he leaves his education. But I make that analogy only because what damage do we do to students when we teach them? And it's the very thing that Charles was talking about. What damage do we do to students by teaching them rule following, and that is the key to success? Because almost everything when they leave university, it's those students who can tactically know which rules to break that are in fact the successful ones. And if you can just flick back to my slides, beautiful. Here is a picture I'll let you decide what that picture is. What do we see there? It's a rhetorical question, no need to yell at, but what do we see? What do we see? What do we watch? This is the student that I actually see, okay? When we look at it like that, we see this young athletic girl. You can sort of tell, the mind is an amazing thing. You can see that this child's an athlete, can't you? The one that's going at the ball. But the one that I'm interested in is this one, because you see, school, certainly for me as a dyslexic person going through school was a game that I had to play every day that I knew that I was that girl. I was hopeless at the game that we were forced to play, and I didn't have the option of not playing that game because that was the only game in town, and that was the reading game. Now, how many of our young students go through that same experience? And it might be, chronic shyness, it might be anxiety. There are a whole range of things, but certainly for a lot of students, that is their experience of school. This is some statistics. I just wanted to be all topical now that I'm in New South Wales. 26,535, it's an incredibly accurate count. Students, 23% dropped out before completing their final year. I'd just like to claim Victoria's substantial victory. But, you know, what are the outcomes for the poor people, you know, amongst us? You know, I recently went to India. In many ways, this is our own version of the caste system, okay? That we know that if a student is born into less financially, positive circumstances, that their outcomes are on the whole so much less. And for a country as wealthy as Australia, I think that that's actually a disgrace. It is a disgrace because, you know, we see this number, 26,535. Would you be less impressed if it was 26,534? Would you care? I hope you would, because that one extra person is somebody's neighbour, it's their niece, it's their own child, it's you. You know, each one of these is a human being that we've effectively thrown on the scrap heap, and that's a concern. On my trip to India, I discovered some interesting things other than Bali Belly, which was fairly horrendous. I'm not usually this thin, I'm still recovering. 1.3 billion people, their median age is 26, ours is 37. So if you do the maths on that, and I can debate with our mathematicians at a later stage, I saw you smiling. Yes, head of maths. I can show you. But if it was an ATAR score for India, their top, 99th percentile is the same number as our whole number of students. Right? Their 99th percentile, that, 1 in 100 kids, is the same number as our whole student population. This causes me somewhat of a concern when we're only 24 million people. This is only going, and that's only India. What about the rest of the world? Can we really, live with a system that's going to say, these class of people are defective? They don't, meet these sort of standards to go on and complete university, and then they'll go on and become burdens to our judicial system, our social security system. But what about the humanity in that? When we convince students from a very early age, Charles, I have to say I hated that slide with the below the line thing, because my name would have been below there, okay? And that would have made me damn angry, and the teacher would have felt it, possibly physically, okay? But what does it do to say that you are continually below that line? Now, look, there may be a whole range of interventions there. Perhaps mine would have been off to the side somewhere. But we can't afford a system that makes any student a loser. I want to know, how we can have these essential learnings. Curriculum, by the way, does anyone know the definition of curriculum? We all have our own, but it's what somebody else thinks it's good for you to know. Okay, it's not what you want to know, it's what somebody else considers that you should know. Now, anything less than handing that responsibility back to the student, in my view, is either entertainment or control. Because when they leave, whether that's secondary school or whether that's tertiary, these people are going to have to carve out their own niche in life. And if they're not used to it, gee, I would far rather that they're learning those skills of self-learning and resilience, etc., when there's a support of adults around, and potentially whilst they're still listening to their parents, rather than, when they leave school. And we wonder why employers think they're not job ready. I hate to say, but a lot of the schools that are doing innovative stuff around is basically still control. Whilst I'm delighted that some kids are building a rocket, that's not helping me if my passion is dance. Perhaps I could do an interpretive dance of the rocket, something like that, a little, cross-curriculum project. My point is that what's essential learning is different from here to how it is in Lithgow. And it's different from where we are here. There are different learnings, and we can't design a one-size-fits-all. I think what we're truly about is we're petrified that we won't prepare these kids, that they won't be safe. So we jam as much stuff into their heads, which is based on old neuroscience, which basically thought that once your brain reached 23, that it was a slow decline to drool and gruel. That's what they thought it was. Your brain literally stopped. It was just a slow decline to the end. Now we know that, with brain plasticity, that you can continue to learn for years and years. Okay, and yet why do we still jam-pack education into kids that are clearly not wanting it or ready for it at that particular time? 21st century skills, we've all heard about them. It's a little sad that we're 15 years or 16 years into the century and we're still talking about what 21st century skills. World Economic Forum, OECD, PISA. I'm delighted that basically the education system has now abdicated, apparently silently. We haven't had marches in the street, but we've now we've abdicated ownership as a profession over to the OECD and PISA because they can give us a nice ranking. You know, it's like the Olympics. You know, where do we sit? But they think that not only, sorry, I can't read, that's the problem, but language, arts, maths and science, not only will you need those, you will also need critical thinking, problem solving, persistence, collaboration and curiosity. I would argue that you've always needed those things. Okay, I don't think that's anything new. That doesn't float my boat. These kids are going to need, you know, ability to synergise different ideas, put things together in different ways. They're going to need resilience like we only dream of, because the world's going to be changing at a rapidly increasing rate, and yet we don't see any measures of those sorts of things. I'll pose a question to you, okay, and I want you to really think about the question, block out everything else that you're seeing and answer this question. Right? What if it's gone? We don't need to tweak the system. We don't need to modify the system. It's stuffed. Okay, we've spent more than ever on education. We've squeezed that damn lemon. All right, we've got every bit of juice out of there. There's nothing left. Time to change to oranges. We need a new fruit. Okay, we cannot continue to do the same thing. At TC, we basically started the school on one premise, and that is that kids have this huge capacity. They're pre-born learners. It's only us that stuff them up. Parents sometimes ask, how do you teach creativity? And I say, you try as hard as you can not to kill it. That's it. You don't need to teach it. It comes hardwired. It's genetic because the kid that didn't experiment died. Okay? They're dead. They're no longer in the gene pool. Okay? We have to be creative. We have to learn. It comes naturally. Why do you think kids stop being creative at about 15 or so? It's all genetic, all right? Let's think, grows up, learns from parent, okay? About the age where you become like sexually fertile. Sorry, he's used the sexual word. Let's just see if we can get a response from that. But about the age that you become sexually fertile is the same age that you become obnoxious, okay? What happens then? Dad kicks you out. Right? So you're forced to move one social distance far enough that he can calm down before he comes and kills you. Okay? Then you start reproducing yourself, and then a funny thing happens. You become a little bit more set in your ways, because if you keep trying the new berries in your new environment, and you go, what do these pink berries do? And what do these yellow ones do? Eventually you will die. So it's actually a pre-programmed thing that you stop being creative at a certain point, because if you start continually living this great experimental life, you're going to die. Okay? So we need to capture kids' creativity whilst they're still there. Now, we had an opportunity at TC. Basically, it was dead. Okay? Those with the get up and go had got up and gone. I could have proposed, if we all wear funny hats, research says that it will increase our academic results, and the parents would have gone, sounds reasonable. Okay? Literally, you wouldn't put your kid in there. Okay? There was, however, a really small group of committed, I would say crazy, parents that thought that we had one more go. We were actually told by the regional director to close on 2 occasions. We were down to 23 year 7s. Hard to offer electives with 23. You can have A or A. Next semester, it's a change, B or B. But I think in some ways we were like this little agar plate. Okay, you know how sometimes like a little cross-contaminant blows into the room and lands in the agar plate and everyone goes, what's that? That could cure something. I think that that's what we stumbled upon. Okay, it couldn't happen in a good school. Who's from relatively good schools? Who, you know, come on, there's more of you than that. Right, you know, you're not doing too bad a job. All right, under my model, you're not. Put your hands down. What are you thinking? Right, no, but you can be victims of your own success. If you're not bad enough, it's really hard building a case for change. True? Is that not true? We had nothing to lose. We were either going to give these kids the best damn year of their last school life at TC before they moved on to somewhere else, but that was what we had to do. When I arrived, there was a great sign on the door. I thought that really expressed the intent. Couldn't see the problem with it. And so we decided that we needed to make a change, and that is to make it relevant to people. We decided we wanted to explore what would happen if we put students in charge of their own learning. We had something called the one-person policy, and that meant that it didn't matter what your role was at the school, whether you were the principal, whether you were a Year 7 student, because we still had year levels at that stage. It didn't matter if you were a Year 12. You know how Year 12 sort of get all sort of swanky, you know? Get out. It's my seat at the back of the bus. You know, those sorts of things, those entitlements. It meant getting rid of my principal car spot, okay? Gee, the staff loved getting out there with that thing and just ripping that one off. You know, the little sign. Still haven't got the office staff to remove theirs yet, but we'll get there. Kids actually have choice in our system over who looks after them and who teaches them. So, you know, we thought, what would happen if you said, rather than having, you know, form teacher X who needs to look after you, we thought, what would happen if you just said you can have anyone? And I thought, well, clearly, you know, we've got like this young, you know, PE teacher male, you know, big guns. We had this cute as science, sorry, no, inappropriate. Had this sort of science teacher, you know, young, enthusiastic. I thought half the school with this one, half with this one. All right? So let's ask 1 to 5. And we only had to go down to second preferences to split the school. Only down to second preferences. I had one staff member who shall remain nameless, and Jack was such a badass, all right? Even his wife didn't like him, all right? He was as grumpy as, okay? And I thought nobody in their right mind would pick Jack as a carer, but he had this little bevy of girls, all right? You know, clearly they were missing their dearly departed grumpy grandfather that needed to be looked after, and Jack cared for those kids. Like, you know, I found out he was human. But, you know, it's like only 2 people in the world don't get married. There's someone for everyone. Okay, you've just got to make the match. Now when we put out class lists, we actually show the kids who's teaching the class. And if they don't like it, they can move. They can adjust. All right, some great professional discussions, how one teacher's gone, I thought I had 25 in that class, now I've got 12. Let's have a chat about that. You know, there's a great professional discussion. That's objective, you know, evidence. And we have those discussions. We have no bells. We get called by our first names. The kids do have my phone number. All right, they got my mobile phone number. I have only ever been pranked once, and I've been doing this for 12 years. The kid was a bit dopey, right? I don't know that it's a politically correct term. He was dumb. But he didn't put his phone on caller ID. So I just waited a few moments and then rang him back. Who's this? Oh, who's this? You know, it's Josh. Good, Josh. Come to my office. All right? But kids are actually amazingly respectful. Parents are amazingly respectful. Like you know, very, very rarely do you get that. Our kids get in trouble for not having a phone at their class. Because if I want to see one, I'm going to text them and they're going to come to me. All right? One of the students got a call from his boss and he just said to the teacher, need to take a call. All right? Went out, arranged his shift change, went back in. You know what? He went back to work. All right? What's the problem with that? Okay, what is the problem with that? When you treat kids like that, they rise to the challenge. We have a shared model of control. We used to just, when we were trialling this or testing it out, kids would come up with this idea and we'd go, yeah, do it. And then they would fall flat on their face and we'd go, why did that happen? Because they haven't got the skills to do some of the projects that they want. So now we have this model called the shared model of control. It's scaffolding by another name. We give them just enough support so that they fall and then we quickly catch them. Okay, that's the model that we currently use. We have students on staff selection panels. So the students actually help select the staff into the school. And our challenge for this year is that there cannot be any failures, not even one. Now, I'm currently working with a boy that has a musical fascination and offered to insert his drumsticks into me. And I'm being challenged to keep him in the school, but that's the challenge, so we're working with his family and buying him a drum kit. We give the kids access to adult-like facilities, so they have microwaves, they have sandwich makers, boiling water, chilled water, fridge. We gave them a dishwasher, they still don't know about that. We get the students to develop a 5-year academic plan, and that might include all the way into their university life. So it's not just a free-for-all. You don't wander into the school and go, I feel like poetry today. All right? These kids have actually got a 5-year plan. They know where they're going. When you give kids control of their learning, sometimes you think that they're just going to do all the fun stuff. I can tell you that when we opened up the curriculum, so there are no year levels in the school now. 23% of what you would call year 8s are doing a VCE subject, which is like a year 11 subject for us. 75% of our year 9s are doing a VCE subject. They actually challenge themselves. They really push themselves. And there is no failure, because if they choose something that's too hard, you know what we do? We show them the monitor and we turn it round and we go, if you can find a gap that's got less than 25 in it, it's yours. Now, they have to get that signed off by their parents, all right, and by a principal, but that's the way we do it. You might be going, well, that's all very well, but here in New South Wales, okay, it's rubbed off. Do people know somebody called Murat? Yeah? I was doing a presentation in New South Wales and somebody said, well, that's all very well for Victoria, but in New South Wales, and Murat leapt to his feet and he said, this is exactly the sort of thing that we want. All right? He said, I will help make that happen. All right? I'm just quoting him. All right? But apparently it's, yes, we had that discussion. All right? But that's what the bosses seem to want. These kids don't have any compulsory subjects. So English, we've gone, can we? Because English has been sabotaged by English boffins who like reading, some of my favourite people. And they think it's really good that an engineer should have to do a comparative analysis between Macbeth and somebody else that's unintelligible. How the hell did we say yes to that? Don't ask English people about what English you should need to know. All right, they're readers. Automatically, you've disadvantaged 10% of your population. It's about communication. So 800 students, 797 chose English, but they all chose it. Nobody can claim, oh, it's forced to do this. I hate English. I don't want to do that. Okay? They are all volunteers. And the other ones, one likes history, so they're getting their literacy through history. Another one likes philosophy, and they're getting their thing in philosophy. And another one, I think it's through PE or health, but they've got some writing components. So they're still ticking the literacy box on that. Students can do a PLP, which is a personalised learning project. And if they want to do it, they can. I did have somebody from ACARA come through and go, so how is this assessed? This is all very interesting, but how is this assessed? And I've gone, it's not. No, that was it. Why would they learn? God help me, because they chose to and they want to. You know, such a foreign concept. We allow them to develop deep interest. So we've got elite sports programs. We've got elite basketball. We've got elite squash. We've got elite soccer. These are national level coaches, and the kids can spend half their time doing that subject. You would be amazed at how quickly a kid can learn stuff when you say, sorry, you're out of the elite basketball program with Ian Stacker, coach of 750 NBL games. You would be amazed at how quickly they can learn. all right, when they know that that's the cost. And some of our kids said, well, I'm not so much into sport, I'm into art. Can I do elite art? We have a thing that the default is yes. It doesn't matter if you're a student, a staff member or a parent. If you've got a request, the answer has to be yes. Has to be yes. Unless it's going to take too much time, too much money, or negatively impact on someone else. Even if we don't like it. Okay? Too much time, too much money, or negatively impact on someone else. And that is incredibly empowering. And we've been doing that for 6 years, and we've never come up with something where we've really had to disagree violently with students. Okay? And so they wanted to do elite art. Was it going to cost us anything? No. Was it going to take any time? No. Was it going to hurt anyone else? No. So some of the students are spending half their time on art. Now we have a thing, we have lots of feedback mechanisms. So we have something called a WASHI, which is a work and study habits index. And if their WASHI falls below 2.5 every 3 weeks, all right, falls below 2.5, warned, second time out of the program, have to reselect. Okay, you'd be amazed at how effectively kids can learn when they really want to and they're motivated for it. Teachers get feedback. All right, teachers get feedback once every 5 weeks. We stagger the cycle so that there's not sort of the payback mentality. But they get feedback. Recently I got one and they can give not only a number but also a thing. And one of them said, Mr. X is disgusting, his breath stinks. And he comes near me. And I've gone, can we let this through? All right, but it did prompt a conversation because for that kid, it wasn't a personal thing because they'd rated them high and all those other things, but there was a personal hygiene issue with a staff member. Okay, really interesting feedback. We don't do homework, we do home learning. All right, basically, you can't find me some evidence that says that homework works at primary school. Just doesn't exist. We've got this really high-performing NAPLAN school near us, and they're just known for their relentless homework policy. And I've gone, you do know the data around this, don't you? Oh yeah. You know that the data says that this makes no difference, that the kids are actually better off having an hour's sleep. Oh yeah. So why are you doing it? You know why. Parents, parental expectations. Okay, so we follow the data, we try and educate our parents into what the data says. We do have homework, but it only cuts in when they start VCE, but for some of them that's when they're 13 anyway. We have a subject called Geek Studies. This is a Tesla coil. It can produce a 3 million volt lightning strike. It's pretty damn scary when it goes off. We have a permaculture and sustainability garden. This is Tanika. She decided that she wanted to come up with elite equestrian. So we have one person enrolled in elite equestrian. It's Tanika. She finishes school at lunchtime and all the afternoon she's got an elite riding instructor that goes out and teaches her equestrian. Yes is the default, I've explained. We have no year levels. You know that if you take a non-streamed class, and this is true across all schools apparently around the world where you don't have any form of streaming, but if you chop off the top 3% and the bottom top 10% and the bottom 10% academically, you've actually got a 5-year academic spread in your class. So if that's the case, can somebody please explain to me why it takes everybody 13 years of cooking? Okay, surely some are so smart that they could do it in 12 or 11 or 10. And would it really kill us if some took 14 or 15? Okay, I don't know what the situation's like in New South. I think it's better because you've got more sort of like, government alternatives for, high-end academic students. But in Melbourne, you've got some kids, we've got this fixed distance race, okay? So it's 13 years, this race. Oh, by the way, you, kid from private school, we're going to spend $500,000 on you, and that's not including the tutoring that you're getting from the other teachers who teach at the other private school down the road, where you do swaps, where you teach my kids, I'll teach yours, right? So 13 years, you're having $500,000 spent on your education, state school kid, you've got $100,000 on yours at a stretch. How is that a fair result? I would contend that it's not. We offer choice within structure, so there is a timetable. Parents get a text if the kid's not at class. They get a a text if they're not there. There are 4 75-minute learning blocks. When you're selling this to parents, as I hope that you do one day, all right, basically you can make this as traditional or as out there as you like. So traditional parent, you can choose Foundation English 1, Foundation English 2, Foundation English 3, pre-VCE English, VCE English Unit 1 and 2, VCE Unit 3 and 4, right? You haven't lost anything. You've got exactly the same as you would in a traditional school. Kid that's really good at English, you can do Foundation English 1, VCE Unit 1, VCE Unit 2, but your maths is not so good. So you're actually going to do Foundation Maths 1, Foundation Maths 2, problem solving maths. You want 6 months off to write a book and you're already ahead academically, go for it. All right? Kids can take no subjects if they want, as long as they've got learning intents there. We varied the start of school time. This actually made national news. I couldn't believe it. Of all the things that we do, we're on the news because, God forbid, we're going to interfere with parents' lifestyle. And that was offer them a choice of 7:15 in the morning till 1:15 at the start of lunch, 9 till 3:30, or starting at 10:30 and finishing at 5:15. Oh, you're catering to all those lazy students, you know, sleeping in and all of that sort of thing. You know, that was the feedback. What happened? We had in our first year 3 early morning starts, and I had 3 kids that wanted a late start. Okay? They wanted to get in, get the school done, and then finish at lunchtime and have all the rest of the day either to study, to work on their own projects, to train for sport, train for music, all of those sorts of things. Students organise camps and excursions. If we can't find a student to do it, we won't do it. We just go, sorry, there's nobody to organise it. And they organise the whole thing. They just don't touch the money. That's the only thing we don't get them to do. We pay over 80 students to work at the school. And they're the sort of jobs. The next session I'm running talks about entrepreneurship. But we pay students to do all these jobs. They get paid $8 an hour if it's during their normal class sort of time, $16 an hour if it's outside of class time. Works really well. It's cheap as... Oh, sorry, no, it's a lot of serious learning happening there. We also encourage students to run their own businesses. It's very normal for one of our kids to say, I'm launching my app tomorrow, and the other kid to go, yeah. Like, who cares? You know, because they've got their own business. It's amazing. I had this, I'll just tell, how are we going time-wise? Can you just flash that time up for me? That's not good. Okay. Oh no, that's okay. I had this one student, because I used to teach business. I was an accountant, that was my thing. And this student came up and he said, I'm starting my own business. What are you doing? Well, I'm taking photographs at parties. That's a business? I just got drunk. What, that's now a business? Yep. You take photos of people in disgraceful situations and put them on Facebook and then charge extortion? Surprisingly not, but it's a good idea. Thanks, Mr. Hutton. So his idea is, and you probably know this, who's young enough to actually, you know, go to parties where they do this, right? Yeah, you look young, you've got pink hair. Is that genetic? What's going on there? Sorry, it's the Tourette's coming out in me now. But, so this kid has this idea. He's going to take photos at parties, be paid to do it. They've got the, you know, and I said, have you got a business plan? Have you got a business plan? Because how could a business possibly succeed without a business plan? The most boring thing to write ever, okay? And he goes, no. And I've gone, are you any good as a photographer? He said, I've got a good camera. I've gone, but mate, can you take an actual decent photo? And he goes, I think. And I've gone, well, how about, right, let's have a plan. You start writing your business plan. Show me 30 photos. Show me that you can actually like use the settings to take a half decent picture, and then we'll talk. All right, yep, okay, we're all good. So I go and see Ben, like a couple of weeks later. I've gone, mate, where is the business plan? And he goes, well, I haven't done it. Well, mate, the daughter life is marked push. You know, get in there. Get in there and have a go. Do your bloody business plan. I didn't say bloody, I don't think. I may have. And he goes, well, I've been busy. And I've gone, what's more busy than this? And he goes, I'm taking photos at parties. But you haven't got a business plan. And he goes, no, I've been too busy. I'm taking photos at parties. What, you're actually getting work? And he goes, yeah, like I'm booked up for like ages. And I've gone, but you haven't got a business plan. I was so disappointed. But that's the new model of business. And he'll do that for a while and then he'll morph off into something else. That's the new washing machine, isn't it, Charles? Right? He just went in and did it. It's a short-term thing, didn't cost him anything. He had the camera, stole it from his father. But, you know, in, out. Now, if you look at statistics of business failure, when he stops that after a little while, that'll count as a failure. That's not a failure. That's just the new way of doing business. In, out, you know, contract work, short-term thing, some 2 days part-time, rest freelancing. When our kids leave school, we want them to have the front door, the back door, and their own business. That's what we say. All right? The front door is the ATAR to walk into the course of their choice. We want them to have the back door, which is a way to weasel their way through the other system and end up at the same point. And we want them to have their own business, which is something that's got small entry costs, small exit costs, that they can earn themselves $20 to $30 an hour for when, not if, for when they find themselves out of paid employment, they can just crank that thing up. What does that do to a kid's self-confidence? Who's known somebody that's been like long-term unemployed or even, to be honest, short-term? What does that do to your confidence? Right? We're giving our kids the experience that if you've grown up, you know, as I did with parents in their own small business, we grew up as that, you know, it was my job to go under the house and bury the cash. I think the law of limitations is beyond that now. My parents are 85, so they're unlikely to put them in prison. But I kid you not, my job was to go under the house and bury the cash in a tin. All right? Now, didn't get as much of a laugh as that as I was hoping. Nobody who works for the taxation department here. But that was how I grew up. I grew up understanding how small business worked. All right? If one's a teacher and one works for the post office, you don't get that. It's sort of deprived from you, that sort of informal education. I reckon school is too much about preparing kids for the future, okay? You're going to need this when you grow up, okay? In the future, you're going to need to do trigonometry and sine, cos and tan and all of that. Maths teachers? Hands? Yeah, you don't want to put your hands up, do you? Because you're liars. All right, I teach a bit of maths, but don't we all, you know, we've been lying to kids for years. You're going to need this. No, you're not. All right? I had our local member come in and he's going, are you sure that year 8's high enough? And I've gone, I'm not sure. But let's do an experiment. I'll give you these pat maths tests and you walk into Parliament and you dish them out and say, look, these are going to be independently marked and the results are going to be put in the paper. And then we're going to have a discussion about whether we think that year 8 maths is high enough level. Are you up for the challenge? Surprisingly not. Okay? Year 8 is pretty damn hard. You know, to a kid who's 14, the future is tomorrow. It's not after you finish your university degree. So we actually want our students to have these lived experiences. If they want to be a professional soccer player, right, let's face it, what are their chances? Not good, okay? But let's let them train like they want to be. Let's let them start on their 10,000-hour journey towards mastery. Let's let them have that experience, because you know what? When they find out that they're too short, not fast enough, whatever it is, they've got that secret of success and they've felt what it likes to be a hero in their own community. If you can give them that secret of success, I always used to be really annoyed. Like I was one of those also-ran athletes. Like I represented the state in like multiple sports, but I didn't get there and I had like Olympic envy, and even coming through the doors today, I'm going, I could have been here. For archery. No, or something. But do you get what I'm saying? Like I had like serious Olympic envy, but in the end of the day, I knew what held me back, and that was me. It was actually my mental mindset that held me back from making that top, you know, like I was good as an athlete, but making that top leap. But kids don't know the recipe. We don't teach them the recipe, and that's 10,000 hours plus excellent instruction, right? Plus a bit of luck thrown in there. All right? And we do a disservice when we hear a kid say, I want to be a vet, all right? And you know that academically they're just not going to cut it, all right? Because at that stage, they've actually got the opportunity. In our school, they can be a vet, all right? Because we've got the biggest working with animals program around, because we asked them, if you want to learn anything, what would you like? And working with animals was the second biggest choice. So these kids are injecting snakes. They're, like amputating legs off lizards that have got a bit too frisky. That's apparently a turn on if you're a lizard, by the way. Rip your partner's leg off. But they have the chance to be a vet in that setting. And if they actually want to go down that pure vet path, then we'll actually tell them, look, you're 13 at the moment, your marks are going to have to be this to get in, all right? We'll help you get there if we can, all right? And those kids, they work and work, but we don't tell them, yeah, that'd be really good, whilst at the back of our mind going, you got no hope, all right? We do a disservice to kids to lie to them, all right? What our job is to support them on their particular journey. How hard is this if you're going, yeah, this is all very well, finish up soon, all right? How can I sell this to staff? Well, basically your challenge is to get them to do less. You actually want them to do less, because teaching or school is too much about teachers and not enough about students. All right, and it's more about a lot of these newfangled ideas in education is about how to help us become better entertainers, to keep kids' nose to that grindstone when they're pushing back. Okay, how to come up with these whiz-bang things that are supposed to engage them, rather than let them fly with their own thing. So you say to staff, how would you like the situation where rather than teaching an academic spread of 5 years, you're probably teaching an academic spread of 2 years, all the kids in your class are volunteers, they know that you're teaching it, and then you support it with a 2-minute rule that says no work, no stay. So if you're not staying, you're out of the classroom. Not ordered out, because we have a one-person policy, but we just say, you're not working today, off to the resource centre. Okay? Or if anyone's disrupting the learning environment for more than 2 minutes, and I can assure you it's a blisteringly short 2 minutes, then they're also asked to go to the resource centre. There's no disastrous follow-up or anything like that, but they go to the resource centre. So it's not really that hard to sell to teachers. We don't want them to develop curriculum, because frankly they haven't got time, and there are better people out there that can do it better than they can. You know that a lot of the best curriculum writers are terrible teachers, don't you? It's true. Not all, but some. That's why they're better off not letting their students. I used the analogy of the battery hen farm. All right, this is some of our chickens and a goat. This is Josh. Josh had a fairly horrendous home life. I'm allowed to tell his story, I got his permission, but he had a fairly horrendous home life. He's being raised by his grandma. He came to us from another school. He wouldn't write, couldn't write, but he loves animals. All right, so he was literally like massively school refusing, and I heard through a friend that this was happening, and I said at that stage we weren't, now we're like busting at the seams, but at that stage we weren't full. And I said, look, let's bring him to TC and let's see what he can do. Josh got involved in the animals program. He probably spends, to be honest, half his time working with animals. He's got a cleaner's key. You know what that means, don't you? He's got more power than the teachers, all right? So he can get into basically any area. He comes in on a Saturday or on a Sunday, he alternates with somebody else, and he cleans the animals and he looks after them and things like that. He runs his own business in terms of going out to primary schools or fates or things like that with his Working with Animals show that he does. He runs a holiday program, so he advertises in the newspaper through a $1,200 grant that we gave him, advertises in the newspaper. He employs a staff from ANZ UK, because I won't give him a free staff member. So he has to pay like a teacher to come in and tick off the legalistic side. And he runs a holiday program for primary age students, where they come in and they clean the cages and do all the things that Josh is supposed to be doing. They do get to handle some animals at some time, and he puts on a free barbecue, but that's his business, all right, that he runs. When you free range your education, these are the eggs that you get, okay? And these are a genuine set of eggs that I got from TC. What do you immediately notice? What do you notice? Not the same. They're certainly not the same. Do they look as attractive as the ones that you get from the supermarket? Possibly not. If you look at the bottom row, third from the right, there's some poo on that one. When you eat one of our TC eggs, you're always in for a surprise, okay? It might be really awesome, because when you grain feed, you know, like when they're allowed to roam and eat bugs and things like that, eggs taste like an egg is actually supposed to taste like. And sometimes they're not so good. I think that egg's been hiding for a little while and whoosh, you know, fills the kitchen. But the thing about when you allow kids to free range their education, they actually do some pretty amazing things, right? And that's what I've got for you. Thank you. I think we've got about 5 or so minutes. Has anyone got like a burning, 10 minutes according to this thing, 9 minutes? Are there any questions that people would like to ask? Skeptics welcome, as long as you can deal with the answer. Your teachers, I can wait you out. Beautiful.
How do primary schools in your area feel about Waging Fresh?
Question is, how do primary schools feel about us? It depends on the nature of the primary school. If they're really conservative, they think that we're, you know, a bit sort of out there. They're all pretty impressed that the fact that we've turned around numbers from 286 to 900 with a waiting list. But the more conservative ones, you know, that's not serious education. But those that, like, it actually takes us about one month per year of formal education to unscrew them up, okay? So depending on the nature of the primary school they've come from, some just jump into it and they just fly through it. For some it takes them, you know, a good 6, even 12 months to undo, you know, what we've taught them, and that is that they just sit there and wait to be told how high the bar is and where to jump and how high and what the measure is and all of those sorts of things. How does the resource centre function? Well, the first thing that a good dyslexic principal does is sacks the teacher librarian. That wasn't his reaction. So we employ an ES13, which is like, you know, the level that requires the person to have a degree. So we employed like actually a librarian. No, sorry, hang on, I didn't say that right. No, I'm stepping back and distancing myself. It's not to suggest that a teacher librarian is not a librarian. They 100% are, but they're just cheaper, okay? And they also don't insist on preparation time and all of that sort of thing. We also did an excellent thing in the resource centre. We sold the thing that as you walk through goes click, click, click. You know that one? The one that says, you're a thief and I'm watching? All right, so we sold that thing and we stopped doing the scanning thing and we stopped doing the book covering thing because we worked out, we did an analysis of it, it was cheaper to have the book stolen, okay? When you actually add the staffing cost, it's better to have the book stolen. As long as you can keep hold of it for 12 months, you're a winner, okay? And believe me, when I started, having books stolen was not the problem, okay? It was trying to get them out the door. So the only books we'll buy is when a kid actually requests a book. It's a big area. My APs, and I have quite a few, my APs and I just work out of that central space. We've got a couple of little dog box offices if we need to make calls and that sort of thing. So there's always heaps of staff around there. The kids don't object to being sent there because it's not punitive. They understand that if they're not working, they just can't be in the class, right? So they don't get yelled at or anything like that. We used to have this triangle of trust. You know the triangle of trust? Parent, school, child, you know, we're all informing on one another, we're all keeping each other informed. And because our parents generally are pretty keen on education, and that's changed over time, but the ones that we've got at the moment are pretty keen. When we told parents that their child had been exited, like the kid was crucified when they came home. And we believe our social contract is with the student, not the parents. And that's the deal coming in. We make it really clear to parents, it's about us working with your child. You're a support person, but you're not their owner. If you don't like it, we're not the school for you. Okay? And so when we were informing on the parents, when the student got sent to the resource centre, the kid came back and they were furious at the teacher because there were a whole lot of consequences. So consequently, the teachers weren't sending the kids to time out, which was degrading the quality of the learning environment. So now, unless there's a pattern, and we've got documentation to follow all this up, but if a student's just out of class once every now and again, we just go, yeah, that's okay, you're a kid. You're going to make mistakes. It's only if it's like a pattern of behaviour, and that just takes the whole stress. We don't have out of bounds areas. We've just got a rule that says don't do anything wrong in the wrong place. Okay? Because you can do an offensive thing in the front office. Okay? And if kids want to build a cubby house down in the back corner, as long as there's a couple of them there to say when the snake's bitten them, that's okay. One last question. Yep, great. I enrolled my daughter in Montessori, and she's a bit of a bright bunny. We actually have a Montessori adolescent program at the school, but that's only about 40 or so kids. But she worked out because Montessori said, well, you've got a choice of this or this. I don't know why Montessori teachers always sound like that, but you've got a choice of this or this. And she goes, well, what do I have to do? Because she'd been in normal school for a few years. She goes, what do I have to do? And, well, you could do this or this. And she goes, but what do I have to do? Right? She's like 6. And they're going, well, I guess you don't have to do anything. And she goes, cool. And she waited them out for a long time. Kids all have a passion. Like, that's the reality. I think we do kids an incredible disservice. Mate, what do you want to learn? You can learn anything. I don't care. Okay, as long as you're doing something, all kids have got something that they're interested in. We've never had a kid that's just sort of like caught going, I'm not doing anything, because like they'll go with their friends and they might find a passion or something like that. It just hasn't happened, and we've been doing it for sort of 6 years. So, yeah. Question.
Not to put the box back on your really creative ideas. What's your university entry look like?
What's our great question. Gee, I'll pay you later. Okay. I've been working with you. That's the cruncher, isn't it? And Charles alluded to that earlier, that you got to get serious when it's like year 10, because you've got to teach them to stop being creative and be more convergent in their thinking, etc. We've been working on universities for a couple of years now. We've just got a deal. It was in the Age, and I think it made the Sydney Morning Herald. Don't know. Yep. We've got a deal with Swinburne Uni, and we've got another 3 universities in the wings. Basically, how good is this? This is gobsmackingly good. Right? 24 months to 18 months before they finish school, they work out what they're going to do, okay, in their final year. 18 months to 12 months out, they sell that to either the university or to the school, and then they get guaranteed entry into the university course of their choice 12 months before they finish. Guaranteed entry, provided they fulfil their end of the contract. Okay? Now, that's mind-blowing. That's just going to shatter VCE, ATA. The what, sorry?
The anxiety of students.
Absolutely. Michael Carr-Gregg, you know Michael? You know of him. 30%, he said, of kids that are in VCE are diagnosable with depression, and 40% with anxiety. Okay, and the sooner, like this is the Linda Christensen, who's the Vice Chancellor of Swinburne Uni, is just brilliant. Okay, and she is the chink in the armour, and the others will collapse down because unis aren't preparing kids for the real world either, and they know it. And people are going around and freelancing their own education, so they need to change. And at the end of the day, we've got 24 million people in this country. We need all of them to be educated and go out feeling positive about education. Good point to finish. Thank you.